So if you're anything like me, you probably spent the last couple hours or even days playing with the new updates to iOS 18, iPadOS 18, and scouring the internet for any new features that went unnoticed. But what I want to do in this video is talk about one application specifically that got a huge upgrade from V1 to V2, and that's going to be Apple's Journal app, which I think is one of Apple's most underrated applications that nobody's talking about. So without further ado, let's talk about the Journals app, how to use it, a complete walkthrough, and all the new updates that happened with iOS 18. Let's get into it. So everyone, let's get right into the iOS 18 version of the Journals application. It was initially released on December 11th alongside iOS 17.2. And it was extremely bare bones, but it was a nice surprise to have. And as of right now, the only way to use a journal app is with an iPhone. It does not have a dedicated application for the iPad or for macOS, which is kind of unfortunate, but it is something to take into consideration. But let's open up the Journals application, and this is going to be what you're greeted with. In the beginning, with V1 of this, it was very bare bones. It was literally just a plus button and then some suggestions on how to actually write a journal entry, and that was pretty much it. And it was all done in either chronological order based on when that memory actually took place or based on when that journal entry was written. But I just want to give everybody a look of what it actually looks like from the home screen or the actual feed. So you can just scroll through here and you can see that I personally have it listed as in chronological order based on when these moments actually happened. So you can see this happened today, this was in September, this was also in September, this was back in August. So I am journal entering a little bit, but not too often. Now what's new with the V2 version is a bunch more statistics, a lot more insights, better ways of categorization, as well as some search functionality, which again, it's hard to believe, but there was no search functionality with the first version of the Journal application. So when you first open up the Journal app, you're greeted with not only your feed, but then also some quick statistics or some rundowns of what's been happening over the years past. So you can see that I have 11 entries in this year, 477 words written, 14 days journaled, and that gives you a little bit of an insight as to what you're going to be seeing in your feed. So the best way to show this off is to actually start a journal entry together. So you just see this big plus button. As you can see, it's the only menu option and there is no bottom menu at all. We'll press that big plus button, and the first thing that happens is you can do a blank new journal entry, or if you give it a moment, it'll give you some suggestions based on what you've taken pictures of, what you've been doing, in order to give you some ideas as to what you should add into your journal entries. So after you give it a moment to populate, there is a recommended and then a recents tab as well. So I like to go into the recommended here because it lets you know exactly what you've been doing. So you can see a Monday afternoon at home, some traditional strength training. So it does pull in data from a bunch of different applications, and we'll go into the settings in a little bit towards the end of the video to show off exactly what applications are being brought in to the journal application. But these are the suggestions that it gives me. So something that I did at home, because we did just come back from a trip, a night out in Zelva, which is, again, I just got back from Colombia, so this would be a good one to do. You also have some other reflection type ones, so Apple will give you some questions to answer, so you can just reflect on those questions, and it's just a little bit of an idea starter to get you going on one of your journal entries. And you do have a little refresh button, so it does give you some other questions. So what is a hidden talent of yours that you may take for granted, or you can just keep going where it says what best awe-inspiring thing happened to you recently, and those journal entry suggestions continue to go. So it'll basically pull in from the Photos application, from Maps, from Activities, from different applications. So you can see here that I was listening to Frozen while watching the Colombia game because my daughter wanted to listen to Frozen. So let's pick this one right here, and all you do is you tap on it, and then it'll bring up all the stuff that it's being pulled together. So it'll title it, it'll give you some actual dates and times of when this happened. You can scroll through all the different kind of cards, so you can see location data is there, a soundtrack that I was playing like I mentioned earlier, some pictures, some video that's easy to look at, and then what you can do here in order to actually get it going is you can actually start writing. So if you want to add your own personal note to it, or you can actually just save it completely without actually writing anything if you just want to save that memory. You also have this option on the top right hand corner, which I just clicked, which gives you the view of the different cards that it's pulling from, and if you press this here, it kind of goes back to the normal view, and then you can deep dive a little bit more into those actual videos. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to start with writing. So we'll press the start writing. We'll say down here, and then we'll be done with that. But here I can give you an idea of what the anatomy of an actual journal entry looks like. So you can have formatting options here with this little A button, so you can format it into bold if I want to, make it a list, italicize, all the normal stuff. You can even change the color of the actual text itself to something like red if you want to. We'll press X there. You also have some other options like this little magic button, which allows you to get suggestions to add to this journal entry. You can actually pull from photos as well, which again, you can add from your photo library. You can actually pull up the camera directly if you want to actually take a picture. You also have the ability to add a voice memo if you would want to, so you give access to the microphone. You have the ability to add a location of where you were. And then lastly, you have the ability to let you know how you were feeling. So here, I was actually feeling very pleasant because I was with the family, we were eating, we were all together. To kind of take that into account, we'll press done. And then that is now a journal entry. And as you can see, since this happened on September 7th, and I have it ordered in chronological order based on when the event happened, it's not going to be at the top of my list. It's going to be right where it was actually done chronologically. So that was the anatomy of a journal entry, how to use journal entry suggestions, and how to actually add a journal entry if you do want to, and if you do want to continue to do this. Now, to take into account the rest of the actual screen itself, the application, you have two other buttons on the entire homepage. The first one being the search button. So you can see that you can search based on pretty much any criteria. So you can search based on activity, photos, videos, location. So if I type in Colombia, all the entries that were taken in Colombia will then populate right here. And then of course, it'll also search based on actual words and text that you have in your journal entry. So for instance, if I type in soccer, the soccer entry of the game that we went to should show up, and it does right here. So again, it's surprising that this was not a functionality that was around to begin with the original Journals app, but now it's much easier to find a journal entry because again, think about it. If you just have an ongoing list of journal entries that happen every single day, it's gonna add up and get a little bit disorganized when looking for a specific journal entry. So being able to now search for specific ones is something that's very welcome. And then you have your ellipses over here, and this is some of the stuff that did get improved. So before, I believe we only had the sort by option. So again, you can sort by the moment date, which is the way that I have it, or entry date, which is the date that you actually submit that journal entry. But then you have some awesome new categories in here like insights. So if I tap on insights, if you're somebody like me who loves data, loves analytics, loves like streak stuff, and likes to be able to kind of count things, this is going to be perfect for you. This allows you to kind of gamify the journal entry experience because it's supposed to be good for your mental health in order to journal and reflect and look back at what you've done. So being able to create a streak based on days and weeks is a nice addition to have. You also have other statistics here, so you can see that I journaled in January, I journaled in September, and nothing in between. So we should definitely work on that. 14 days journaled, visited 3 times, so you can see all the different places that we visited, so restaurants, airports, amusement parks, bakeries. 489 words written, 97 this month, 333 per year. So each one of these cards are expandable, which lets you give you a little bit more insight on what you're actually using. And then finally, you do have the calendar, so you can see that there's a little dot for every time that you have a journal entry on the day that you did journal. So having these insights, in my opinion, is a great addition to the Journals application and one of my favorite reasons to actually be using this. Now you do have some other options here, so if you click on the notifications tab, it takes you to the actual notifications to be able to turn these on. There's 2 types of notifications that you can turn on with the Journals app, one being journal schedule, so you can actually turn this on and you can remind yourself when to journal on certain days. So if you want to do it every day, every other day, only on the weekdays, only on the weekends, you can do that and then get a timer. And then lastly, you have your keep your streak notification. So if you do want to actually gamify this a little bit more, you can then do that by turning on an actual keep your streak notification, which is very self-explanatory. But I like to turn these off because I like this to be a little bit more natural and I only journal when I want to. Then you have their health access option, which allows you to go into the actual journal application, which is more on the mindful stuff. I have this all turned on, so it kind of integrates together with my state of mind, how I'm feeling, and things like that. You can turn those off and on as you see fit. And then lastly, you do have the ability to lock the journal, so if you do want to keep this extremely private, you can now do this. There's now multiple ways to lock different applications based on what you're doing, so you just type in a code, and then you can lock your journal application and your journal entries from anybody else, depending on if they have your phone or not. And then finally, the last section I want to bring up is going to be settings in the journal application. So if we look for the journal app, go into journal in your settings, these are all the settings associated with the journal application. So you have your location on, your camera on. This Apple Intelligence in Siri I'm on 18.1, so that's why I have this option. This will not be an option available with you on 18.0, but in 18.1 come October, it will be. You also have the ability to search, so this is all a new search functionality in the settings, the notifications like I mentioned, live activities, background app refresh, cellular data, so all those are turned on. Then you have your journaling suggestions, so journal can show your moments but can only access the items you select. So suggestion, privacy settings, suggestion notifications. And if I go into the journaling suggestions, you can see that what it's pulling from. So I'm even going to turn on the state of mind because I like to have that on. So these are great ways to actually see where and what applications the journal app is pulling from for those entry suggestions that I mentioned earlier. And you have some other settings, and again, this is much more robust in the V2 than it was with the V1. So you have the ability to skip journaling suggestions. You can add an entry title always, only for moments, or never, which are those suggested titles that they brought up when you are being suggested a certain journal entry. always use the moment date. I like to keep that turned off. And then you have your general settings like notifications turned off, being able to lock it like I showed earlier, show insight summary, and then finally save to photos. And you can actually export all your journal entries if you want to have this maybe off the cloud and keep it on some sort of hard drive or something like that. So if you tap on this, it may take a few moments, but I'm going to leave it alone for now. But that is the entire Journals app. I like how Apple really doubled down and really made this a little bit easier to use, more robust, again, more insightful, and really kind of taking in from maybe other third-party applications what made those journaling applications so great, like the statistics and like the insights. But that is the Journal app. Let me know in the comment down below what you think, and let's finish up this video. So that will just about do it for this video, everybody. Like you saw, the Journals application got a huge revamp and got some much needed features, which honestly should have been around with V1. Apple released the V1 of the Journals application, and it was almost too bare bones. There was like nothing more than just a simple journal entry application that probably anybody could have made. So I'm glad that Apple really doubled down and tripled down on the Journals application and gave us a bunch of different things like insights, notifications, being able to search, and things of that nature. So let me know in the comment down below, are you somebody that's using the journal application? Were you a journaler before the actual journal app? Did you journal physically on pen and paper? Or did you just start to journal because it's now an iOS application and it's much easier and more accessible to you, like myself? I'm definitely in that boat. But that'll do it, everybody. If you did make it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end of this video. And if you want to watch more videos like this one, especially some iOS and iPadOS walkthroughs, click on one of these videos right here. And until next time, I'm Fernando, and I'm out of here, everybody. Peace. The biggest travesty is that the Journals application is not on iPadOS, but maybe next year.